Jim Carrey is one of Hollywood's most beloved comedic actors, having made a name for himself over the last few decades, starring in popular movies like Bruce Almighty, Ace Ventura: Pet Detective, and plenty more. As reported by The Guardian, he has recently talked about retiring from acting, and his reprisal of Dr. Robotnik and Sonic the Hedgehog 2 would probably be his last. But he will still be remembered for his illustrious career and string of iconic roles. So, here are 10 things you probably didn't know about Jim Carrey. He was homeless before fame. Growing up, he didn't have the easiest life. He was born into a family that was of the lower middle class, as his dad worked 2 jobs to put food on the table. However, when his dad lost his job, Carrey was forced to get a job as the loss of income forced his family to become homeless. He opened up about his experience with homelessness in an interview with Inside the Actors studio host James Lipton. He recalled, "My father was a musician who got a regular job to support his children. When he lost his job, that's when everything fell apart. We went from lower middle class to poor. We were living out of a van. I quit school at age 15 to begin working to help support my family as a janitor." He wrote himself a $10 million check. For years, Carrey has talked about how he manifested the life that he has just by willing it into existence. In an interview with Oprah Winfrey in 1997, he told an old story about how he wrote himself a check in 1983 for $10 million for acting services rendered. "I wrote myself a check for $10 million for acting services rendered and dated it Thanksgiving 1995. I put it in my wallet and it deteriorated. And then, just before Thanksgiving 1995, I found out I was going to make $10 million for Dumb and Dumber. I put that check in the casket with my father because it was our dream together." He was rejected by SNL. While Carrey rose to prominence on the sketch comedy show In Living Color, people tend to forget that he unsuccessfully auditioned for the preeminent variety series Saturday Night Live in the early 80s. He actually auditioned for the show multiple times, first trying out in season 6 and then again in season 11. Both times he was rejected in the early rounds, and he didn't even get to audition in front of the show's creator Lorne Michaels. However, he would later go on to host the show 3 times. He was the first actor to have 3 #1 films in the same year. Back in 1994, you might recall that Carrey was all over the place. That was due to him starring in The Mask, Ace Ventura: Pet Detective, and Dumb and Dumber, all of which were released in 1994. Starring in a hit is a big enough deal for any actor, but for Carrey, in the mid-90s he couldn't settle for just one. The 3 films were each a box office smash hit. The year kicked off with Ace Ventura: Pet Detective on February 4th, and just as dust was settling, July 29 saw the release of The Mask. That movie was an incredible hit, but just as the praise was beginning to pass, he showed up in Dumb and Dumber on December 16. He was meant to be part of the trio of the Three Stooges. Carrey was meant to be part of the trio, including Sean Penn and Benicio del Toro, to bring the long-awaited The Three Stooges production by the Farrelly brothers. However, the actor suddenly dropped out of the project. Although he noted that he believed the project was long dead, Carrey admitted that it was actually his health that prompted the decision. Prior to his exit, Carrey had promised to put on between 40 to 50 pounds. Although he had already gained about 35 pounds, he didn't think he could add another 40 pounds that were required of him. He explained that, given his age, coming back from such weight gain can be detrimental. He nearly died on the set of The Truman Show. During the 1990s, there was no star able to captivate and convert an audience quicker than Carrey. Whether through his ludicrous rubber-faced jokes on Ace Ventura or his twisted portrayal of the cable guy, there is no star more willing to go the extra mile than Carrey. However, on one particular shoot, that commitment to the role nearly saw Carrey lose his life. In The Truman Show, at the end of the movie, Truman almost dies as he tries to escape the fake world he's unknowingly been living in. And it turns out Carrey almost died while filming that scene. In 2018, he opened up to Vanity Fair. "I don't know if you can see it in the film, but they've got divers under the water, and I'm actually giving the signal of like, I'm in trouble," which was a clenched fist. "They just saw it as acting. I went under, I had no breath left, and I was drowning. I was under the water at the bottom of the pool, and with the last breath, with the last hint of consciousness, I just spun and made a couple of gigantic strokes toward the back of the storm and came up outside the storm gasping for air and exhausted. I just barely made it to the edge of the wall where the sky is and hung on the edge of the wall gasping for air, looking back at the storm that was raging still, and it went on for another minute and then slowly shut down. They didn't know where I was, and then they finally saw me and came over. I almost died. That was the real deal." Despite the near-death experience, the film would become one of Carrey's crown's brightest jewels. It may not always be his most keenly remembered film, but it certainly showed the world that Jim Carrey was more than a funny face. He was trained by the CIA for the role of the Grinch in How the Grinch Stole Christmas. Carrey actually needed the help of the CIA in order to cope with the sheer amount of discomfort in order to play the Grinch in Ron Howard's How the Grinch Stole Christmas back in 2000. It wasn't because the Grinch was so heartless and vile, but it was the costume and makeup were just a nightmare to put on. The entire process involved having prosthetics caked onto his face with horrible glue, yak hair attached to every part of his body, including his hands, which rendered them fairly useless, and having his eyeballs covered. The whole process was agonizing for Carrey. He had to go through this laborious makeup process every day, for hours and hours, for months. During an appearance on the Graham Norton Show, Carrey said, "The first day was 8.5 hours. And I went back to my trailer and put my leg through the wall. And I told Ron Howard that I couldn't do the movie. Then Brian Grazer came in, being the fix-it man, and came up with a brilliant idea, which was to hire a gentleman who is trained to teach CIA operatives how to endure torture. So, that's how I got through the Grinch." He paints in his free time. Carrey is an incredibly talented and hilarious actor, and it might come as a surprise that he's actually a really talented painter. For years now he's been focusing on art, specifically painting. He has shared that the paintings have helped him connect deeper with his inner life. He initially began sketching to escape dark times in his life and later began painting, which he enjoyed. In 2017, he released a 6-minute documentary, I Needed Color, that showcased his painting lifestyle. After that, people couldn't stop talking about his paintings, especially the fact that they're also incredibly bright and colorful. He wrote children's book. Jim Carrey is a man of many talents. He writes and is an artist. In 2013, he released a children's book called How Roland Rolls. The story follows a little wave named Roland that is afraid of hitting the beach because he believes that his life will come to end. Roland eventually learns that yes, he's a wave, however, once he hits the beach, everything will be fine because he's more than just a wave, he's a whole big ocean. The book won the 2013 Gelett Burgess Children's Book Award. The book's illustrations were done by Rob Nason, who won a Golden Reel Award for his work as art director on the film Anastasia. He never took acting class. Jim Carrey is an incredible actor who literally manifested his amazing career. He is a hilarious comedian who made a deal with himself that he was going to be successful and then follow through on that deal. Rather than taking acting classes, he went to various auditions and landed small acting roles until he was able to land his role on In Living Color. It was then that his career was able to skyrocket in the right direction, and he was able to land a leading role in Ace Ventura: Pet Detective.